Agencies Drinking Beer is brought to you by Proposify, software that helps agencies streamline their proposals in the cloud and get faster sign-off.
Welcome to the third episode of Agencies Drinking Beer, a podcast where we interview an agency owner, learn valuable lessons, and get a buzz on. On today's episode, we interview Mike Hachey from Egg Studios, based in Halifax, Canada. We talk about the need to evolve and adapt your agency to stay ahead of the game.
Let it roll.
It's rolling.
Well.
How are you, Kevin?
I'm great, actually. I'm on my second beer, and life is good.
You're feeling better than last week?
Yeah, the last one was tough. It was a morning podcast. I don't like those. Too much Red Bull, too much coffee. Got me a little edgy.
We actually haven't listened to last week's podcast yet, but I think we're both under the assumption that we were miserable and we bored people to tears.
I think so.
Very well could happen, but not this week. We're in a good mood this week.
Yeah.
We're going to keep this going.
Having said that, though, I mean, the person we interviewed was very cool last week.
Oh, the interview was fine. That's our saving grace.
Yes.
So we're going to actually be interviewing Mike Hachey later, who's a very interesting guy. He runs a video company, content creation company. I don't know what he likes to call it now. But essentially, they create digital video content. They're really good, so he's going to be an interesting guy to chat with. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about the top 3 posts of the week. The first one, actually, this one's for you, Kevin. This is about designing for the elderly.
Wow. There's an easy being me.
I'm sorry. That wasn't a fair joke.
Oh, man. Okay, keep going.
No, Kevin just turned 50 last year.
Yes, I did. And you just turned 30.
31,
31,
actually.
that's
yeah,
right.
I'm climbing. I know.
Yep.
I like to tease you a little bit about it.
That's all right. I can handle it.
That's good. So this is a post written by Ollie Campbell at Smashing Magazine. And what they're talking about is different constraints to keep in mind or understanding the way older people, and they kind of define the term older people. They try not to put a defined age next to it, but let's assume anywhere from 65 and up for the sake of argument. You know, so many times we're designing things for people. We often kind of exclude older folks. We kind of assume they're not going to be using our products, don't we?
Yes, but I mean, my mom and my aunts, who are all in their 70s, they all are on Facebook. They're all using pads. They're all using, smartphones. So, I mean, it's crazy to overlook that market.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what's interesting about the post is because it talks about, some of it's obvious. We go, okay, so how would you design something differently for somebody who's a bit older? Well, obviously their vision's not as good, so the font size has to be big and all that kind of thing. And I mean that's fairly obvious, but there was some surprising insights that I read about that I wanted to share. So one of them was actually motor skills decrease as you age, and so if you design something where the buttons are too small, where you need to be very specific about where you click, that can sometimes cause some problems. The other one was how actually in studies they had shown that when you said your relatives were using iPads and tablets, that's actually very correct and lines up with the research is that a lot of older people don't use small phones.
Right.
They want the bigger tablets.
I think that's why they're designing phones now. What do they call them now? The big ones.
Yeah.
Because look at the population in North America, the baby boomers. I know we overuse that term, but it's true. I mean, I'm the last year of the baby boomers. Believe it or not, I'm part of that generation. I mean,
I believe it.
We rock.
It's a good. No,
what it could mean.
I'm sorry. Well, and the other one was cognition. So, the way memory, I guess, changes as you get older, as your short-term memory kind of goes. So even that can kind of impact the way you design something, because if you design something that has multiple screens and you kind of have to remember what you did on the last screen to get to the next stage, that's going to cause some issues. So it talks about avoid splitting tasks across multiple devices if they require memory of previous actions. All right, the second blog post that I wanted to go over was can you grow your organic traffic without generating content, by Quicksprout. Been a big fan of Neil Patel for a long time. Certainly knows his stuff when it comes to SEO and marketing. So he had an interesting post. So typically when we think about getting better search rankings, we usually think, okay, you have to produce a lot more content because Google tends to favor longer posts with more words. That's why like Wikipedia articles tend to rank number one for very targeted, focused keywords. But then he brings up the example of like Airbnb, for instance, has pretty much no content on the page, no keywords, and yet it ranks very highly for vacation rentals. Or if you think about, he uses the example of Upworthy. You've seen those sort of clickbait, Upworthy type of posts on Facebook and that sort of thing, where it's pretty much just a video on a page and a few paragraphs, and doesn't really have a lot of keyword-rich content, and yet it ranks really highly. So what are they doing differently? Well, basically, it's a post about backlinks, which shouldn't surprise too many people who know about SEO, or if you have to do SEO for your clients. But I think it does tend to get ignored a little bit, and we tend to put too much emphasis on creating lots of content and a lot of long, keyword-rich content. And I think what he's doing is just showing in the example that at the end of the day, if the content is great, it doesn't really matter how many keywords it has on the page. The third post that I thought was pretty excellent actually wasn't. It's kind of an older post, but I didn't know about it, so it didn't exist. If I didn't know it existed. True. No, kidding. This was actually written by David. I'm going to embarrass myself forgetting his last name. David H.H. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. He's actually the creator of Ruby on Rails and Basecamp. He was the original developer of Basecamp, and in doing so created Ruby on Rails. So he wrote a post back on May 13th of last year called Drive Development with Budgets, Not Estimates. So of course you remember whenever we had to estimate on a development job, especially a big job, right? How difficult it is to say how long something's going to take or how much it's going to cost. Somebody wants you to build, an application like Proposify. Imagine trying to estimate on building our software, how long it was going to take. Be no way to know. So what they kind of talk about is just how a lot of us, even in agencies, are still in the mindset of giving estimates for projects, how long things are going to take. So what he talks about is, instead of saying, whatever thing you want to build, it's going to take this long, it's very similar, but there's a difference where he talks about saying, we can budget, say, 4 weeks, and we'll work on it, and we'll get as much of, feature X, Y, and Z done as possible. But basically, you're paying for those 4 weeks. So it's not like you'll get a definitive list of exact features, but, during the course of however long that project is, say 4, 6, 8 weeks, we're going to work with you and build as much of it as we possibly can. A lot of times clients, they've got it in their head that, feature X, Y, and Z have to work this way. And, sometimes they waste a lot of the development time just polishing things or cleaning things up. But by putting yourself into like a time constraint to say, we've got 6 development weeks to do this, we're going to build as much as we can, it's going to kind of focus you on building the essentials and not spending a lot of time just polishing and tweaking things that nobody else is going to care about. You're going to spend that time on the most important things.
True. Oh, makes sense.
And convincing a client of this.
Well, that's what I've been thinking the whole time. I mean, it's challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. That's a hard thing is, what do you as the developer or the agency consider finished, and what does the client consider finished? Because oftentimes clients have the idea in their head that you're going to hit a certain point in time where you feel like the project is finished. But as we know, software is never finished. There's always ways it could be better, and how much of that is in scope and how much is, I like the idea of what he's talking about of if you can just convince a client to say, let us build as much of this as we can within a certain time period, then once that time period's over, it's finished. And you can budget them out for more.
Kind of ironic we're talking about this too with the first post, because I think it's a generational thing too. I mean, a lot of traditional business people that haven't been in this industry that are clients are going to find it challenging. Because this is a non-traditional type of a way of approaching estimating and budgeting and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I'll just quote one thing that he says. He's like, that's what proposing a budget based on worth helps you with. It focuses the mind on what assumptions we can challenge or even ignore. If we only have 5 weeks to do something, it's just not going to work to go through the swamp to get there. We'll have to find a well-paved road.
Nice.
All right, well, those were the top 3 posts of the week, and now let's move on to the interview with Mike Hachey.
The man, the myth.
I'm really pleased to have Mike Hachey here today. He runs Egg Studios. They create amazing video content for a number of different companies and industries. Really pleased to have you on the show again.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. You came on about 6 months ago. You were on the videos, and now you're on the audio-only version of Agencies Drinking Beer.
Yeah, I like where you guys are going with this. I know, it makes sense. I think the advertising industry and, agency culture in general has a couple things in common. They have the alcohol consuming side of the business and then also the storytelling side of it. So you guys are here to tell people's stories and see what's out there, current trends and pop culture and what's happening in the agency side of things since you left the biz. I think that's smart, and I think it's kind of an interesting topic to tackle, because I think in advertising, I know we have Mad Men, but we don't so much concentrate on the industry of today. And if we watch The Office and Community and all of those great little shows, I think you could do something on advertising today that would be hilarious, because I think our industry, it's interesting. We're all working in an artistic industry, creative industry, but our art is generally not looked at the same way as an artist would if they're sculpting or painting a picture, and having this piece created. Our work in advertising is actually looked at completely different, almost like it's sold and that's it. There's no residuals. For the guy who came up with, it's got to be KD. That's it. You came up with that great line. It was paid for. I guess it's kind of like the patent industry in that sense.
People talk about that with design too, right? They talk like some designs you look at, whatever the medium is. There's always that amazing artistic quality that you see in some of the really good work out there. But I mean, at the end of the day, like art and design is, art is self-expression, whereas design is there's a purpose behind it. You're often designing for other people's needs, not your own. And I would think that there's kind of a parallel with that when it comes to creative, content or advertising, right?
Yeah, I think you're doing the same thing, even though it could be for a beer client or a lottery client, a communications client, government, whomever, that you're doing an ad for, whether it's broadcast or print or any creative content. I think what it's still our art, and we're still striving to create something that's unique, that stands out, that people will that people will be engaged with and interpret in some way. And I know there's lots of bad advertising out there, just like there's lots of bad art. But I actually think, I don't even know how we got on this topic, but I actually
We're
think
here now.
that yeah, I know, but we, as in the advertising industry, I don't think we're recognized sometimes the same way that you would be in the other side of the artistic community, like maybe even films and series and things like that. We're kind of filling the gaps in between the stuff that people really want to watch, a little bit in that. But when you really break it down to what we do as individually in our jobs, we really are quite passionate. And so and we are making we are changing the way people think about certain things. So maybe if you take you take some of the advertising mentality, even bring it more into the community, you can see where then advertising and art and storytelling and whatnot all of a sudden becomes a little different than what you would think for an ad for a casino.
Just something I wanted to touch on was, you talked about how we think of the best commercials that we've seen often there, kind of in the past, stuff that resonated with us maybe at a time when we were young and we remember it sticks in our mind. But I mean, now for kids growing up, or even just young people growing up now in 2015, with the fact that so few young people especially are watching TV, we all have ad blocker, is and I hate to say the fragmenting of,
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But the fact that we're on fragmented media, as buzzwordy as that is, and it's getting harder and harder to actually show a 30-second spot where you can put that kind of creativity, is that a hindrance for Egg? Is that a barrier that you guys are overcoming somehow?
No, and I don't think it's a hindrance for any company. I mean, we always have been evolving with the times. If there's a paradigm shift in how we consume media, that's one thing. So yeah, we are now going to be choosing what we want to watch when we want to watch it, or listen to what we want to watch, like these podcasts, when we want to listen to them. But that doesn't mean that advertising is not going to shift into these, and that in the middle of this podcast, or maybe even right now, we have this podcast brought to you by Egg Studios, and a little ad plays.
Yeah.
And then we go, welcome back.
Right.
So and the thing is I think if you're looking at it is the length of it, and does it feel too long in the pre-roll before a YouTube video? Now is anybody clicking it? I mean,
If you don't get them in that first frame, they're clicking skip.
I think we would have to look at the actual real statistics on that. I mean, you might know more than me, but I mean there is even and you can see it in more news clips and other clips brought to you by The Daily Show, let's say, or others that have the clip. You can't click through it, so we may be subjected to advertising more, so that way if you want to watch this Jon Stewart clip from The Daily Show, you do have to watch the 30 seconds first, just like TV. I'm just saying that now that's brought to your mobile phone or your laptop or your iPad. It doesn't matter. You're still going to be subjected to advertising, and that's not going to go away, because that's what pays for all of the great content you're watching. So if it's banner ads and big box ads, and they're now animated, and the takeover of a screen, whatever it is, it's evolving right now, and where we'll probably see, to your point about shorter ads, we'll probably see a really Vine-like nature of ads, where maybe they are shorter, so by the time you hit skip, it's already done and you've already made an impression. So maybe there is very short impressional kind of advertising that can be done, that maybe like Vines and other things like that.
when you have to tell a story, right? You can't tell a story in a second. You need a bit of time to play out, and even if that's a 30-second clip or a minute, you can still tell stories very quickly. But I could almost see it shaping the kind of work you do, because it's not that you necessarily make the story shorter, but you do something creative to get the viewer hooked in that first 3 seconds, that they're not going to skip it.
Exactly.
And that is where maybe the challenge is.
I mean, that's always the key to advertising is where's your hook, and how are you going to keep people watching it for 30 seconds? And if the ad is shorter, and how do you engage them in one simple little idea in 15 seconds? I guess with it becoming this, watch your programming when you want to watch it, wherever you want to watch it world, I think, whether it's a 5-second ad, a 10-second, 30-second, or a 5-minute video, or a film, I think, there is always going to be content out there, and I think people can now go to your own channel, so it's the Proposify channel, and bring that content in, or you can get it to them somehow in the world that they'll be playing it through. So we're changing how we traditionally watch our entertainment. So yes, how do we get, where will we go in the near future to the way down the road? I think in the near future is going to continue to have pre-roll ads. You may not be able to skip through them at times, and then there could be a series of time where we go through a very trendy Vine-like nature of short ads that you can get a bigger impact in. I think it's up to the creative minds to think of ideas that are different so that you can have bigger impact. When we do stuff, we're not necessarily looking at the length of time. We're looking at more of a strategy of how to get more people to consume the media. We don't want to make a video and have nobody ever watch it. So it's more about what they're watching than just making a video sometimes too, right?
Are you getting clients coming to you that are still in sort of that traditional advertising mindset, or do you find that now more companies are catching on to this idea of content marketing and inbound marketing, and let's not necessarily make our video piece an overt ad. Let's actually tell a story that's just content that our target audience wants to consume, and then we can sort of build that relationship. Are clients starting to get it, or is that something you have to kind of educate them about?
Well, you see it everywhere. Anybody who is that we're working with, they tend to have some sort of content marketing strategy. And other clients that are new to the world of content creation and whatnot. Sometimes it's just they just want to tell their story. They just want their elevator pitch, so to speak, told, and that might also serve many other purposes for them.
Like, what's your team look like?
Oh, well, we have a mix of producers and directors. We have animators, and we have different styles of animation. So some are more rooted in cartoon sort of based style, and then others are 3D and lots of motion graphics abilities and capabilities. But we have audio engineers. We do sound design, music composition. So we've built more of a full gamut of production services, so that we can do everything from pre-production all the way through to post-production. And you kind of have to, I think, in a small market like this. This is an evolution that was more came out of necessity. When we started, when we started, we were repping directors, and we were a commercial production house. So we would essentially produce commercials, and then when we were done filming the commercial, we would hand the footage back to our client, and they would edit it and do all the post-production elsewhere.
Well, we met in 2004, 2005, back when I first started with Extreme. And how many people were you then? Just a few of you? Because you were doing a lot of their work.
Well, your directors were contractors, weren't they?
Yeah, so that was, well, back in that day, it would probably have just been me.
Because
So,
you were doing
yeah,
the anti-smoking stuff.
Yeah, that would have been
stuff
just
was
me.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That was such great stuff.
Yeah, no, it's it's in a market that tends, in a smaller market. In Toronto, there's lots of different opportunities that would exist and that would propel you further, and you usually stay in as a production house, and then there's different post-production houses, so you would have editing, and then online, which would be your color correction and putting everything together. And you'd have different people doing the graphics and animation, and also different house doing the sound. So we've kind of brought all of those services together, under one roof, and formed Egg Studios, so that we can be an all-service company to the advertising community. So we've grown over the years. So it did start as me, and now 10 years later, it's 22 of us.
It's amazing how fast you grew, and in this market too, that's challenging.
Well, we say this market, so for the listeners, we might have listeners in Scotland or Australia or somewhere. We live in a little corner of Canada. Canada in itself, just population-wise and whatnot, we're kind of like the U.S. is our big brother, but even within Canada, Nova Scotia and the other Atlantic provinces are kind of, I don't know. Would you say looked down upon by the rest of Canada?
No, I don't think looked down upon. I think it's just what you're getting at is we have less than 1 million people in the province.
Yeah.
You look at, so when we say challenge,
it's not an urban metropolis.
No, and you have to be creative, and just like the post that we did last time with the video post we did with Mike, having to do things pro bono and try new things and present new things is very challenging. Yes.
When we think about agencies that do any kind of creative work, whether it's your kind or another's, I think there is a little bit of a stigma against smaller regions, smaller cities, where we think New York, Toronto, Vancouver, that's where the best work's happening. That's where it's at. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who owns an agency who lives outside of a major city, but doesn't want that to overshadow or dictate the global reputation that they can build for their company?
Well, I think the creative will stand for itself in a more global economy. People win awards, and they get noticed in the advertising world through those awards that they win in this industry. If you're winning international awards, it doesn't matter where you're at. But let's say that doesn't matter to every client that's even in your region, of whether or not you're winning awards, and how do you stay relevant in your own region when the client could go to a bigger market, even to have its advertising done. So the client could be here in a small region, but then they could have their advertising agency in Toronto. So how do you compete against the Toronto companies? Well, you have to compete. So you have to be better. And we're very, I know we all want to be protective of the work that's here, and I think we all talk, about the loyalty to, markets and whatnot, but you still have to perform really well, and you have to have those, I think, really solid relationships with your client. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's never going to be the most amazing work, but if the relationship's really, really, really strong, that's where you'll get the return. And I'm not saying that it would ever be even an agency's doing for good work, bad work, or mediocre work, or whatever people out there judging work that's created are saying. But the point is I think the relationships matter the most when you're in a small region competing for work.
Great.
And I think those relationships also you need to do obviously the job and do it well, because that's important too. There's a return on investment. But if you're really good in a small market, you can do quite well, and you can compete with the bigger markets as well, and live in a place where the lifestyle and the balance of life might be much better.
Well, I mean, there's something about, I guess, okay, I'll step back and think. When I was involved in running an agency, it was easy to look at other companies in bigger markets with bigger clients and bigger budgets to say, well, of course they can produce that kind of work when you've got 9 months to work on it and a budget of 10, 15 people on the same project. I mean, not that you'd want to, I guess, sound like like it's a scapegoat, but is it as easy to compete when you have limited resources? When not only are there fewer clients in a smaller region, they also have sometimes lower budgets. Maybe there's a small pocket that do have.
So you're asking if it's
does budget dictate the quality of the work?
Yeah, if it's harder to compete creatively, you mean, based on the budget that you might have?
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, I think you have to come up with ideas that fit the budget, and the ideas have to be they don't have to be complex, that require a lot of money, or if you're coming up with ideas with limited budgets, then and the idea is very ambitious, then you got to find ways to make it happen. So I think this is an incredibly creative community that I think it is world class. I think we have to still figure out how to market a place like the Atlantic region here, in order to show people out there that there's a lot of great creativity that's coming from this market, and it's just not advertising. So I think just like any small region or jurisdiction, you have less people doing what we do. So if you're in Toronto of 4 million people, you're going to have a lot more creative minds there. So I still think there is some really great creative people in all of these small regions. It's just a matter of how do you promote that.
When I think about what it was like to run some big projects, I mean, when we ran our agency back in the day, we had some big projects. Let's say maybe our biggest one was like $100,000. Okay, and there's a lot of functionality to it, and we were building mostly like websites and applications. But I mean, I don't obviously live in your world, so I don't know. But I would assume that you might still come up with the same issues of scope creep, having a vision that you kind of get into and realize like, oh, we're going to need more budget to pull this off. I mean, do you face that, and how do you overcome the issue of just staying within budget? Because that's hard, I think, for a lot of agencies.
Well, we work a lot differently than most companies, and I think because we are the executors of a lot of the work, we're working from budgets that we believe we can work within. If there's scope creep, then we bill out the scope creep, unless we agree otherwise. I mean, I think it's as a small business, you're always there negotiating on what's fair.
How has it worked with? I know at one time, at least, and I know you still partner with agencies, but at one time that, from what I understand, made up pretty much all your business was going and building relationships with advertising firms and being brought in as a contractor under them to build and produce videos. But now you also own a lot of the client relationships with the end client. I mean, how did that transition come about, and how has that changed the way you market and sell egg?
I think there is a couple of lines to define, I think, when it comes to advertising, and there's definitely this gray area now that, or at least it's starting to blend more together, where the longer format video, which is what we used to call corporate videos and promotional videos, instructionals and industrial videos. I mean, that was our game as a video production company. You know, those were always direct to, you know, the quote unquote client. So now, you know, I think you see a lot of advertising agencies and other firms, PR firms as well. They are looking at the content creation world, videos that are now on a website that they were managing, you know, regular content for, photography and, you know, and all of their, you know, just regular updates. Now video is playing a much bigger role. So now their clients are asking them, can we have a video? So we'll probably see a lot of our work still come from advertising agencies and PR firms, but now we'll be you know, working with them to come up with different ideas and stories and ways to communicate.
Let's take a step back, because we were going to talk about the KCup campaign.
Yeah. Let's go into that.
Yeah, why don't we hear a bit from you on that?
Okay. Kill the KCup is very interesting little side project that we started. Gosh, it'd have to be almost a year ago now. It was an idea that came to mind based on what we thought was a huge problem in the world, which was these plastic K-cups going out into landfills because you couldn't recycle them. We had a Keurig machine in our office, and quite a few of them actually. And we had one at home, and it wasn't very long before really we were looking at it going, wow, this is a lot of waste. And we were really good recyclers, and I think Halifax has an amazing recycling program and always has. And so we took our Keurig machines and turned them in and searched for a new more environmentally friendly option for our coffee machines in our office. And we found a company here in Halifax called Social Bean that basically had this bean to cup method, where you grind the beans in their machine, and then through no plastic cup or anything, out comes the coffee into your mug. Nice. And so no plastic, no nothing. And then they come and they would take all of the grounds out and give them to urban farmers to basically use in as compost. So, you know, they had the same values that we had as well, using fair trade coffee, all kinds of really good things that ag and both my partner and I really, you know, put out there from in our own lives and company. So anyway, we got rid of those K-cups, and over about a year it was about a year after that, we were chatting with our supplier that owns Social Bean, and and off and on, when he was in the office, we would talk about K-cups and how destructive they are and just the problem. And so I suggested, you should just basically, because I've been reading different articles. One was the stat that, with enough K-cups to, circle the earth 10.5 times that were produced in 2013. So, it was just horrible statistics on how much, 60 billion K-cups into landfills to date. All of these stats that were just like, wow, that is a lot. Because, you think about it on an individual scale, but you never think about it when 13 million machines are out there brewing up, hundreds of K-cups, so all of a sudden, I was just thinking, this is terrible. So I said, just tweet out all of these articles that are already written, like scathing reviews of Keurig and K-cups and, what's going on with Green Mountain. And so we, he did that, and, over a couple months, and a little bit of traction and stuff like that. The problem was, at the time, weren't the biggest social media users either. So looking at that as their channel to be able to tell their customers about this problem, it wasn't nearly as impactful as it needed to be. So I was chatting with Doug, the owner of Social Bean, and we thought, at Egg, we wanted to do a project where we can combine some animation, live action, and we took on the Keurig cause, the KCup cause, which many have done before. There's many universities that take part in challenges to rid their campuses of K-Cups. There's and just many initiatives that have been started, but they were so just disjointed, right? Not a bigger voice. So really, when you have something like a hashtag like Kill the K-Cup, that's where you can bring more people together, under one little banner, and we could all use it to basically, tell people, that we're fed up. And so, the video itself was created to help draw attention to the problem. We needed to do something that would feel impactful, so when you watched it, you went, oh, wow, that is a problem, right? Because, when you read the stats at the beginning of the film and saying that 10.5 million K-Cups circled the earth, and then eventually, the invasion, happened. And people can get behind that. It's done in satire, it's funny. It's,
We'll have a link to that in our show notes, too.
Yeah, and I think what you really want to do when you're doing any sort of video and telling a story is you have to have those hooks, and we were able to do that in a few ways. We did this Cloverfield-esque, making it feel like that found footage, maybe a little Independence Day meets District 9, but it was also trying to showcase the talents we have within Egg to produce something that like this, of this quality, knowing that if we made it look as big as possible, that it would be passed around more.
Yep.
Because I think that when you're playing with special effects and things like that, if it comes across too cheesy, then maybe it wouldn't be shared as much. The execution had to be good enough that people would think that God, they put a lot of time into this, and this is just as good as a lot of these big commercials. We wanted to feel like any other major production we do at Egg. Yeah. And that's what we did. So we did invest the time in it to make it feel as as true to the genre of filmmaking as possible. And I think we did. Our team did an amazing job. We have just such a great, dedicated team of people who are getting a kick out of all of the attention this campaign has received. So that's the other side of it, right? Is that we are seeing a bit of a movement happening.
Well, I think we ran out of time, so thank you very much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was fun.
Always a pleasure.
So I like your new offices. Thanks,
You're going to decorate it for us.
Yeah.
All right.
Go Pats.
Signing off for now. Thanks, Mike.
What would you think of that interview?
That was great. It's always great to hang out with Mike.
Yeah, I don't know if this was clear in the interview, but that was in person. That wasn't over Skype or anything. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's a nice change.
Just an in-person interview.
Absolutely.
But next week we have our first interview that's with somebody from outside of Atlantic, Canada. Because we had Heather, she's from New Brunswick. Mike is here in Halifax, and we had Scott on the second interview, and he's based out of Newfoundland. So we're going to go all the way to the opposite side and of the U.S. anyway, and interview somebody from California.
Sweet.
So look forward to that. Jealous of their weather.
Yep. Especially now.
It's horrible. You have a joke for us?
Well, again, I tell you what, you made a lot of references to my age at the beginning of this podcast. So this is a classic. You've heard this, a classic Rodney.
You love Rodney.
I do love Rodney, but he says, yeah, when you get older, food becomes better than sex, so I put a mirror above my table.
That is a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, hey, I'll have a new one every day, every week, excuse me.
We're recording every day now.
Hey!
Your editing plate just got full.
Yes, it did.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on this episode, and have a great day.